Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
But why does she always fall in love at the wrong time and with the wrong people? He'll be her boss if this works out. What can you tell me about yourself? Jacob suddenly asked. It's all on the resume. Sophia was embarrassed. Yes, but I want to hear you, not a blank piece of paper. Tell me more about yourself. Well, I am 19 years old, as you already know. I am a second-year student of PhilFac, studying different languages. I need a job so I can pay for my studies. Sophia started giving out facts. I'm not interested in your biography. Tell me about yourself as a person. The girl was embarrassed again. She was not ready for such questions. But then the guy decided to help her. What are your hobbies? And I like to play the guitar, and I also play the piano professionally. I went to music school. I used to be great. Can you sing? Very good. And what 3 qualities describe you as a person? Sophia was stumped by this question. She thought for a couple of minutes before answering. It seemed to her that there was a catch in this question. I am responsible, punctual, and a very quick learner. Jacob was shaking his head from side to side. He clearly didn't like these answers. Listen, don't you want to go for a walk? Suddenly he asked. Sophia was completely confused. Now she didn't understand anything at all. She didn't understand what the guy didn't like about her answers. Excuse me, the girl clarified. Well, I suggest we get some fresh air. It's too stuffy in this room. Don't you think? Well, I guess we can go, Sophia said uncertainly. Then Jacob stood up, walked over to the floor hangers in the shape of a tree, and took off his coat from there. Leaving it and taking the keys from his pocket, he gestured for the girl to leave. She didn't hesitate a minute and went out the door. The guy closed the office and went with Sophia to the elevator. But they were stopped by the secretary. Jacob, excuse me, where are you going? She asked excitedly, approaching the guy. She stared into his eyes like a lost puppy. Sophia almost threw up from that look. That girl had no brains at all. Sophia and I are going for a walk. If more clients come, canceling all the appointments. I'm busy today. But Jacob tried to object. Secretary Betty, follow orders. With these words, pushed Sophia to the elevator and pressed the button for the first floor. As they rode, Sophia was seized by a feeling of some trembling excitement and expectation of something. It seemed to her that this day would not be as boring as she had assumed before. You're probably wondering, where are we going? Right? Asked Jacob as they left the building. The girl was so afraid of saying the wrong thing that she just nodded. She didn't know what to do in situations like this. This was happening to her for the first time. She realized that she looked just like this receptionist. She probably had the same feeling and look, but she couldn't help it. And if she said the wrong thing, she'd lose her job. And that's a rare chance. It's hard to find jobs in this town, even for waiters. It was kind of weird though. It was a small town, and it was a port. However, there were indeed very few vacancies at the labor exchange. They walked in silence for about 5 minutes, and then turned a corner. There was a cozy cafe. It was not so big, but there were not so many visitors. Cold air blew and filled their lungs with freshness. The cafe was decorated in bedraggled coffee colors. There were cozy signs, menus, and even a modern-style painting hanging somewhere. Sophia didn't understand much about modern art, but there was clearly some sort of meaning embedded here. A teapot with eyes pours tea on a book, perfect nonsense. But the author clearly had something to say. Sophia looked at this masterpiece so much that she did not notice how Jacob called her for the second time. Sophia, do you like chicken? Asked the guy once again. Yes, of course, she answered like a robot. The guy grinned and passed this information to the cashier. Then they sat down at a table near the window. You can order something. If you want, I'll pay. Jacob smiled, hanging his coat on the back of a wooden chair. Sophia shamelessly opened the menu and looked carefully at all the items. And there was indeed a large assortment of food here. What kind of cafe was this? She hadn't been here before. The girl decided to order a croissant with coffee. Then Jacob went to the cashier again and handed over this order. How do you like this place? Asked the guy. Sophia attentive. And the place looks quite cozy, she concluded, not very emotionally. This is my favorite cafe in this city, Jacob explained. Then they met eyes. The guy seemed to be waiting for Sophia to react, but she didn't understand what he was getting at. Okay, I'm kidding. This is my cafe, the guy laughed. Sophia didn't understand the joke at all. He had brought her to his own cafe to brag about how beautiful it was. What was the point of all this? The guy was acting awfully weird. She noticed Jacob looking around. Do you see a waiter? He asked. Sophia looked around. There was no one in the hall, only the cashiers. 2 customers at different ends of the hall. No, the girl answered. Honestly, probably in the kitchen. No, you're wrong, Sophia. They're not here at all. And that's because I take this business very seriously. This guy over here, he pointed to the cashier. He's here. He's been bartending for 5 more years. That's why he deserves to work here. Auntie says I'm not doing business right, and that's why we don't get many customers. But that's not true. I just have a very responsible approach to my work. I want to give my customers nothing but the best. And the service has to be top-notch. When Sophia realized what he was getting at, he doesn't want her to work for him. She has no experience, no age, and she doesn't know how to talk to people. Then why did you bring me here? To humiliate me, to show me I'm no good at. Sophia was getting hysterical. She rarely got hysterical in front of people, but this situation upset her very much. She had been given hope in the beginning and then taken and almost told it was a joke. Jacob looked at her with a smirk. He seemed to enjoy making fun of people. But Sophia, although she was shy, wouldn't let someone make fun of her and humiliate her. She stood up and headed for the exit. But suddenly her elbow was caught by a strong male hand. Wait, Sophia, we haven't finished, Jacob said more seriously. The girl turned around and sat down at the table again with a hurt face. She tried to pretend that it didn't hurt her at all, but she failed. She was never very good at showing emotion. You didn't even finish listening to me, the guy said. But it's clear enough. I'm not so stupid that I can't understand your hints. I just don't see why you would, Sophia. I wouldn't waste my time on someone I'm not interested in. I brought you here for a reason. I needed to see how you felt about yourself, and I came to the conclusion that you don't value yourself at all. What makes you think you're not worthy of this job? I have no experience. I'm no good at anything. I thought this would be a simple question and answer type interview. The answer is you caught my eye at first sight. You have some zest, but know that you're really underestimating yourself. So I made a slightly different decision from the one I wanted to make a few minutes ago. Sophia was intrigued and found it best to wait and remain silent. I'll give you a trial period of a week, and you'll do everything right. I'll hire you full-time. The girl was stunned by the offer. She was both humiliated and at the same time given a chance. A few minutes ago, she had already lost any desire to work here. But now the interest made her go for it again. At that moment, they brought her croissants. And to give herself time to think, and at the same time not feel uncomfortable with the silence, she began eating those croissants. When she finished, she said, "Okay, I accept your offer." Jacob smiled victoriously and led the way back to the office to sign the necessary paperwork. Sophia returned home in high spirits. She was finally hired, or rather on probation. But it was better than nothing. She just had to work hard for a week, and she could do that. As already mentioned, the girl either performed her duties perfectly or not at all. "I've been hired," she announced to her family sitting in the living room. Uncle was sitting on the couch watching TV after a hard day's work at the factory. The aunt was cooking something at the stove, and at the same time arguing about something very loudly with Alice, her daughter. No one even paid attention to Sophia's statement, but she didn't take offense. They had always thought of her as nothing, just a roommate, nothing more. Aunt Kelly was a very tough woman, yelled at for every misdemeanor, even though Alice and Sophia were both over 18. Alice stayed with her mother all the time. They lived like cat and dog. Kelly Peters' husband ignored it all. He seemed to be completely disillusioned with married life. Sophia was still puzzled as to how they could possibly be together. The divorce should have come after the first year of marriage. They were completely unsuited for each other. Kelly was a fighting woman, strong and fiery. Often she dropped her husband for anything she wanted to do. Was home and didn't wash the dishes, didn't put away his socks, broke a mug. What kind of growth? My mother told me not to marry you. I'm a fool. Kelly yelled at her husband. He was just a common philanderer. No, not even a philanderer. At least they could have an opinion. Peter didn't give a damn a long time ago. No matter how much his wife yelled or scandalized him, he never said a word. In this family, the head of the family was definitely a woman. Of course, such an environment in families affected, and on Alice, their only daughter, she became callous, rude, and indifferent to everything. Often sent everyone with motherly words, threatened to kill, and sometimes threatened her own death. She was very insolent. It's like she's not out of her rebellious teenage years. Piercings and piercings, lip, eyebrow, nose, ears. And she recently got a piercing at the cup. Her makeup and clothes were just as provocative. Bright makeup never hurt anyone. But only if it wasn't considered every day, which was what she did every day. Sophia tried to convince her that it was wrong. It attracted too much attention, and there were a lot of bad people in the world. Sophia was a year older than she was, but she felt like a strict old woman who was giving her a lot of moralizing. But Alice only sent her back far and wide. Sophia sat on her bed and read a book all the notes were written. And tomorrow, after studying, she had to go to her first shift. There was noise and shouting in the apartment again. Kelly had had another disagreement with her husband. From morning until late afternoon, the endless yelling continued. Sophia was used to it, and there was nowhere to go. She wouldn't go out on the street. Her parents died 10 years ago, so she'd been raised in this house since she was 9 years old. She learned how to survive here. From a very young age, to keep her head down, to run errands when not asked. She wasn't happy anyway. However, they stopped beating her. Aunt Kelly's mother had recently lived in the house, but she passed away last year. Then everything went downhill, as if the devil himself had cursed them. They were demoted from their jobs, Peter at home. Expensive things broke down every week. First, the fridge broke, then the washing machine, and as if that wasn't enough. He was in a car accident. He wasn't hurt, thank God, but his car was almost totaled. Sophia had long ago realized that she would pay for her tuition, if she had to, as well as her other expenses, solely on her own. Suddenly, Alice entered the room and sat down at the dressing table. This room belonged to the two of them, and there were a total of 3 in the apartment. The girls shared the smallest one. Kelly's mother used to sleep on the sofa in the living room, but now Peter slept there, because Kelly didn't want to sleep with the ungrateful pig Sophia stirred. Alice was obviously in a hurry to get somewhere, as she quickly painted her eyelashes and applied lipstick to her lips. "Where are you going?" Sophia asked excitedly, putting her book aside. Alice didn't even turn around and continued to put on her makeup. Sophia got up from her soft, warm bed and walked over to her cousin. "Alice is going somewhere more strictly," Sophia asked. She was worried, not because she was concerned about her sister's safety, but because if anything happened to her, it would be her fault. It would be her, Sophia. Kelly is such a conniving woman. If she wants to, she can kick her out of the house. It doesn't cost her anything. Why are you so attached to me? Alice couldn't take it anymore and stopped ignoring her sister. Answer me, I'm worried. The second mom is here. Under painted eyelashes, said Alice. I'm going to the club with the girls. Club? What club, Alice? Are you out of your mind? God, Sophia, how boring is that? The girl stretched out unhappily. You've never been to such places in your life, so you dare to judge. Go read your textbooks. Read Alice, but think about it. What if something happens to you? There's dangerous people out there who could slip something into a cocktail. You wouldn't even know it. You must have had boring parents like that. Too bad they died. Alice stood up, picked up a small black purse, and went to the door. Sophia tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen to anything. She left and her parents didn't care at all. A frustrated Sophia went back to her room and continued reading her book. However, all thoughts were now preoccupied with Alice. She was just an unstoppable damsel, disgustingly well-mannered and, of course, completely out of control. In a way, though, Sophia invited her freedom to do whatever you wanted and earn as you wanted and have fun too. For example, Sophia herself would never go to a club, and not even because she didn't want to, but out of fear. During the short period of family life, her parents managed to instill good morals in her. In all things, Sophia was genuine, a catch, and never got into trouble. The worry for her sister never waned, and even at 3 o'clock, so the girl decided to dial Alice. There was a dial tone, and then the girl heard a sound in the room. Alice had forgotten her phone or left it here on purpose. Whatever it was, she had no connection with her sister now. Sophia got even more agitated and decided to tell Aunt Kelly everything. She would definitely be worried about her daughter, and together, they would find a solution to the problem. But Sophia didn't take into account one fact. Her aunt hated her. Aunt Kelly, here's the thing. Alice she didn't leave unsure, Sophia declared, cautiously entering the bedroom. The aunt was sound asleep and was very unhappy to be woken up. Gone and gone. Sluggishly, she muttered to herself, "Why won't you sleep? Get out of here. You don't understand, she's gone to the club." The aunt rose up on her elbows, her eyes flashing with anger. "Jesus, girl, how old are you? What are you doing meddling in everything? What do you care about Alice's life? You're the one who was against this behavior. I pretend I'm against it because I'm a mother. But you're only 19. You're gonna be worse than the old lady at the door. Who do you think you are? I'm just worried about her. I think it's very dangerous. If you worked better, you'd be tired and you wouldn't walk around the house at night like a ghost. I've already got a job, unlike your precious little girl who's out and about." "I'm in a bad mood too," Sophia replied. "Pray she doesn't bring you an unexpected surprise later. How dare you?" Kelly couldn't take it anymore and slapped Sophia on the cheek. She couldn't even say anything out of offense. As soon as she came to her senses, she immediately went to her room. Kelly was still muttering to herself, but Sophia wasn't listening. She had just been insanely insulted. Getting slapped for just being concerned was humiliating, wrong, and cruel. The next day, Alice didn't show up, but Sophia didn't care anymore. Since Alice and her mother treated her like that, she would treat them like that too. Sophia quickly got ready for school, fed the cat, and left the house. Today in the university was very boring, and almost in all pairs the girls slept. Finally, the evening came, or rather after dinner time the study was over. Everyone went home, but not Sophia. She rushed to work. What exactly influenced such a cheerful mood? The girl didn't understand, but she really had a lot of fun going to work, although a day ago she couldn't even dream about it. A day ago she'd had hoped, even though theoretically she hadn't been hired yet. The probationary period guaranteed that she would get half of the salary of a regular employee. She came to the very coffee shop she wanted to run away from in a scandal. Thank God Jacob stopped her. She wouldn't have found a job as good as this again. Not everyone is willing to take on students who are only willing to labor in the evening. Jacob did. He was a very kind man. Sophia didn't know much about him, but this noble act already spoke volumes. This time, to her surprise, there were quite a few people sitting in the cafe, a far cry from the number she had seen the first time she had come in here. Maybe it was the time. Is it really always this crowded on her shift? She wouldn't last long like this. Having had enough, she walked over to the cash register. There was no employee, so she had to wait. Then a blonde-haired guy finally came out of the kitchen. He looked like a student too. He looked very stylish. Even the fact that he was wearing a uniform didn't spoil his image. His blonde hair was tied back in a ponytail, and his long ears looked as if they belonged to a real elf, and he looked like a wood elf himself. All the features of his face were refined and elegant, and on the saint his eyes shone with green emeralds, but just a miracle, not a colleague. Finally, this guy noticed Sophia waiting patiently behind the counter. He gave her an appraising look and took two leisurely wiping clean glasses from inside. "You're Sophia, right?" She replied shyly, averting her eyes to the side. "I'm Eric. Nice to meet you." The guy introduced himself politely. "Eric is a pretty rare name." "I agree, but I have an excuse." My dad is from England, and I was born in New York. But then my parents got divorced, and I decided to stay with my mom. We moved here by this North Sea is pretty cool. It's a lot colder than New York or London, though. But is that what I'm getting at? Yeah, my dad gave me this interesting name. It's quite beautiful. Don't you think so? Now all you have to do is find your Ariel. Sophia laughed. Oh, you like cartoons too? Sophia looked at him with surprise. Never mind. Ian laughed. I'm 22, and I'm still a fan of any cartoon masterpiece. And I don't mind Disney princesses. Smiled the girl. I'll give you a test someday, the bartender promised. Suddenly something caught Eric's eye. He was looking somewhere behind Sophia. The girl turned around and saw the man of her dreams. He was wearing a black diver and a chain on his chest. He was wearing plaid classic pants. Jacob was simply irresistible. Sophia froze, looking at him. Hey, can you hear me? Eric touched her shoulder. The girl took her eyes off Jacob and turned around. Come on, I'll tell you everything here, show you. I can feel it. The boss decided to check how I work, Eric said and led the girl backstage. The kitchen was very clean. There were two men, about 40 years old. The smell of fresh baked goods was very good. Sophia looked at the cook's work table. They were molding something delicious with cinnamon dough. I wanted to taste it. I was drooling, if you'll excuse me. What are you guys cooking? She asked, passing by the cooks. They smiled and replied that it was all on bonas. Sophia loved them. But in her family, they were rarely cooked. Actually, she was the only one who knew how to make them. But she almost always had no time to do it. Sophia kept up, shouted Eric. He had already gone a decent distance. The kitchen was indeed very spacious, and at the end of it they could see some kind of white door. That's where he and Eric were going. The guy opened that door and pointed to a whole pile of dishes that clearly needed to be washed. And that was probably her responsibility. She'd been put on probation for a reason. Gotta make fun of her. Anyway, I'm sorry to say this, Eric began. But you'll have to clean it all up, and you'll have limited time. An hour, Sophia exclaimed. She had expected everything, but not such a paltry amount of time. Yes, and then I'll show you the work in the hall. Get used to it. You'll often have to sweat a lot here, but it's worth it. Jacob very often gives bonuses to those who have done well in the past month. I can see he's a very good and generous man. But I don't know about the other one. He rarely visits us really. His second appearance in 2 days really scares me. He's never come here just to eat. He must be very hungry, Sophia tried to joke. But Eric didn't appreciate the joke. He just smiled and walked out, leaving the girl alone with a mountain of dishes to go through in an hour. Time was running out, so Sophia got down to business immediately. She decided it would be quicker to pour all the dishes out for us at the beginning, and then lament her method. It really worked, and Sophia got the job done. Even in less than an hour, she shook her hands and looked at the job done. All that dirty mountain had turned into another mountain of white, shining dishes. Sophia stepped out into the hall. Eric was working the dispensing desk and taking orders. It was a full house today. People were even standing in a small line to try some new cakes. When all the customers got their orders, Sophia finally managed to distract the guy. I'm done with the dishes. Friendly, she remarked. Eric smiled as well. However, that smile was more strained than genuine. He was probably tired as hell. The scoreboard was showing over 100 customers, and it was only 9 o'clock at night. And the guys had only been working here for 4 hours. Why are there so many people here tonight? Sophia asked, helping the guy wipe glasses. We launched a promotion, or rather buns on promotion. A unique flavor, which is not available in any cafe. You get one, you get a second one for free, so people are coming. In fact, it has a very good effect on our income, and the tips go up. But you're awfully tired. It's my job. You'll soon realize it's not that simple. Just because you've done the dishes doesn't mean you've done everything. There are worse things. For example, I hope you don't throw up right here, Eric sighed. Well, there are different people in the world. Some are more adequate, some less so. But once I had to scrub the whole toilet because someone decided to smear his waste, so to speak, all over the walls and floor. They were even on the mirror. I still remember it like a bad dream. Oh my God, Eric, what kind of bullying is this? It's customer service. Let's get to know each other. You've got a lot to learn. But I can tell you one thing for sure, our boss is very interested in you. What makes you think that? Sophia asked, perplexed. And the guy, instead of answering, just looked at the man sitting at the table against the wall. It was the boss again. He was looking directly at her without taking his eyes off her. Sophia was horribly embarrassed by this, and she tried to avert her gaze as quickly as possible. "Oh my God," she said. Eric only smiled wryly and continued drying the glasses with a towel. By the end of her shift, Sophia was completely exhausted. She served tables, washed dishes, made sure the kitchen was clean. In general, she had enough to do. Eric had left an hour ago and left her the keys to the coffee shop. She needed to finish up, wash the dishes, and pick up all the chairs. As she was picking up the last chair, someone came up behind her. She was very frightened and turned around and slapped the stranger on the cheek. Only it wasn't a stranger at all. It was Jacob again, and he seemed shocked at this reaction. I knew, of course, that my heavy breathing against his back could be a turn-on sometimes. But why hit me? The boss said offensively. The girl stood in shock, covering her mouth with her hand. She was terribly embarrassed. He would definitely fire her right now. She hadn't even passed a day of probation. Hitting her boss. That's a hell of a thing to do. "Jacob, please, I'm sorry." Sophia cried out, trying to see how hard the blow was. She touched his cheek, and he let out an involuntary painful groan. "Please, I'm sorry, I thought you were muggers or worse." Who, for example, asked it even playfully and sleepily involuntarily embarrassed by such a question? Why specify? It's already clear. Well, rapist, murderer, she muttered to herself under her nose eye. I will now run for ice. She turned around in a minute and immediately put cold ice cubes to Jacob's cheek. Please excuse me. Yes, I apologize, Sophia. The guy grinned. Just so I can really forgive you. You'll have to fulfill my wish. Sophia's head was full of dirty thoughts, but she tried to put them aside. The guy seemed to understand what she was thinking. No, Sophia said seriously. I won't ask you what you thought I was thinking. What was I thinking? Trying to play dumb. Sophia, I want to give you a ride home. Do you mind tonight? Right away. Sophia, after a moment's thought, replied, yes, okay. But you should know that I don't live close by. What do you take the bus for? Sophia packed her things. Finally, they left the coffee shop. The girl closed it safely and followed Jacob. When she saw the car, she stood like a dumbfounded. It was a very real Mercedes, up to the kind that few people in this town had. She was very embarrassed to get into this expensive car, but she overpowered herself. She gave her address, and they drove off. There is no other word for such a ride to the destination. How was your first day on the job? The supervisor asked. Pretty productive. I managed to eat a couple of buns, and my boss is giving me a ride home, Sophia joked. I was watching you today. Probation's a probationary period after all. You were very kind and understanding. In a way. You gave a clearly needy grandmother who came for leftovers not one pie, as she asked, but two. And you added salad and fried potatoes. And then Sophia felt very ashamed. She had ruined everything again. The girl was sure that no one was watching her at that moment. I'm sorry, please, it won't happen again. Guiltily, Sophia said. Jacob laughed. I'm not judging you, I'm praising you. Do I feel sorry for the leftovers? Yes, we often have untouched, and buns often go to waste. And we throw them on the garbage dump. Where do the birds finish them? And you've done such a good deed. You know, you even gave me an idea. Now I'm thinking about the idea of giving leftover buns to the poor. It raises our ratings in the eyes of the public, and the produce wouldn't go to waste. What do you think? I think it's a great idea. Rejoicing in her heart, Sophia agreed. She was even more convinced that her boss had a very kind soul. He was even willing to give food to the poor. They drove in silence for 5 minutes, but then something unexpected happened. Stop the car now, Sophia screamed. Jacob swerved to the right and jerked on the brakes. They stopped right on the roadway near the curb. Sophia ran out of the car and ran toward the couple. They were obviously a little tipsy, or maybe a lot behind her. Sophia yelled across the street as they ran closer. "Hey, take it easy. What are you doing?" replied the tipsy guy. He did not let go of his victim, which turned out to be Alice. And she was drunk, too. In the smoke just stood swaying and indifferently stared at the unfolding situation. I said let her go quickly or I'd call the police. Jacob came to the rescue. He got out of the car and approached their motley company. "So what's going on here?" he asked angrily. Jacob confused everyone. "Please talk some sense into this guy. He's taking my sister to the wrong place. Don't you see? She's in no condition to make rational decisions." Sophia prayed. "Hey, buddy, let your girlfriend go and go on your way," said Jacob, addressing a strange drunk guy in his early 20s. "I'm not letting her go." She said yes. "You'll pick her up tomorrow. Tonight we're going to keep having fun." Alice smirked at the guy. Yeah, Alice was smiling. She was obviously high. Her eyes were just glowing with artificial happiness. A happiness that seemed to be hers alone. She's out of her mind. Sophia screamed in horror, looking at Jacob and begging him with her eyes for help. "Okay, gentlemen, I'm calling the police," said Sophia's superior. "Call them. What's the big deal? We're just having fun. There's nothing illegal about it. This person is a minor. Jacob's got a drunken boyfriend. Be nice. Let her go nicely. Find another fool. The drunk wouldn't give up. You'd think you'd seen her passport. She said she was 18. No one pulled her tongue, so she is. Anyway, I don't care," my dear squinted. "Jacob, since you're so advanced, you probably know that in our reality, it's a simple matter to put a man in jail for anything. And then the police will figure out if you're right or wrong. So what if it takes a while? 8 years behind bars isn't such a long time, don't you think? So if you're really sure, you have nothing to fear from going anywhere with her. In the meantime, I'll make one little call." The guy hesitated immediately. Fear was easily read in his eyes. A common coward, a neighborhood. No big deal. All the fervor faded immediately. He quickly let go of Alice and ran away. Or rather, the alcohol tried to get away. What else were they using? He's really under the influence, and he can barely waddle. Alice, on the other hand, let out a dejected groan. Ruining all the fun, she cried, smearing makeup all over her face as she was ushered into the car. "You're not yourself. Shut up," replied Sophia. Alice was placed in the passenger seat in the back and had her seatbelt fastened for reassurance. Sophia sat in the front next to Jacob. "Sis, where did you get such a nice car?" a drunken Alice asked. Sophia ignored her antics and words. "It's your boyfriend." Alice didn't get tired of Alice, who was cute and has money. "How long have you two been together?" "He's the one who gave you that car. It took a long time to work out my sister." And she got drunk and nasty and laughed. As soon as they got to the house, Alice was pulled out of the car. She stood up, staggered, and after a moment moved into the nearest bushes. Sophia was ready to burn with shame for her relative. "Thank you." Sophia thanked her boss embarrassedly. "You're welcome." "Sophia, after this busy evening, let's switch to the first name. Because I'm getting awkward," answered Jacob with a laugh. "Yes, okay." Laughing in response, the girl came into the light of God. Finally crawled out of the bushes drunk Alice. So it was clear that it was time to end the dialogue. "Thank you so much. Oh, I mean you for your help. I'll see you later." While smiling cheerfully, the guy said goodbye. He walked briskly to his car. One could even assume he was drunk too. But he was just happy and nothing more. "So come on in," supervised Sophia Alice as they entered the apartment only quietly. "Please." After saying those words, Alice immediately dropped something. It was very loud. So Sophia was already making 1,000 excuses for this situation in her head. But no one even went to the hallway. Everyone was sound asleep. Peter, as usual, was sleeping on the sofa in the living room with the TV on in front of him. Sophia carefully turned off the TV, even though her uncle didn't deserve it. But then again, it wasn't like he had done anything wrong to her either. She led Alice into the room and put her to bed. Then she changed into her pajamas and kept saying that she felt sick. So Sophia envisioned this option as well and put the basin right in front of her bed. Finally, everything was done and Sophia could go to sleep, and only she closed her eyes, as she heard pitifully and whispered Sonia. "Sleep?" quietly asked Alice. Sophia didn't answer anything. She didn't want to deal with this drunk anymore, just wanted to sleep. Today had been a terribly hard day, and it had been a crazy night. Sophia kept whispering to Alice. And then Sophia couldn't take it anymore and finally answered, "Why are you easy with me, please? I'm scared." Sophia sighed. She walked over to her bed and lay on her side. The plan was that she would lie with her sister for a while and she would fall asleep. Then Sophia could safely go back to her bed and sleep for the remaining hours of the morning. "Sophia, why did you help me?" Alice asked unexpectedly. "Because you're my sister," Sophia answered almost automatically. "You could have left me there. I don't deserve help. Everyone deserves help. Alice, I don't know what would have happened to you if I hadn't shown up on that road and where you've been all day. I mean, you left last night. Well, me and the girls went to a club where we met some guys. I went with Jenna and 2 guys to their place. Maria left with some other dude. We were really drunk, so no one remembered her after about 10 minutes. Anyway, we just hung out at their apartment, listening to music, drinking. Jenna locked herself in a room with one of them. It was getting late in the morning, and I was so sleepy. My head was splitting open. I ended up falling asleep. I slept until 3 p.m. Then one of the guys woke me up, like the one who spent the night with Jenna. She'd already left and didn't even bother to call me, and I had a terrible hangover. So he let me stay there until tonight. I passed out again, and then his friend came over, the same friend we've been hanging out with. And well, we went to that club again at night. And then I don't remember much, but my head hurt like hell now, and I'm starting to feel ashamed. You saved me from God knows where that fucking dude was taking me. I'm glad you're home. Alice is safe. I hope you'll listen to me once in a while." Sophia never expected this favorable outcome. Getting along with her cousin seemed impossible. And yet it happened literally in one evening. The morning was quite ordinary, as it should always be. Sophia stroked the cat for a long time. Veja put it on her lap. While she ate her oatmeal, she then leisurely dressed and surprisingly felt fine. Though she estimated she had slept less than 4 hours and was still remembering the conversation with Alice. Things were finally working out for them. Sophia looked into the bedroom once more. Her sister was asleep. Sophia decided not to disturb her and only left the headache pills on the table and a glass of water. Her head would definitely be spinning after yesterday. Sophia was very surprised that her aunt and uncle were not home. They went out 2 hours later than her, and now it was only 3 p.m. Sophia almost fell over in shock. She looked at her watch on her phone. It was showing 7 o'clock. She had gotten up at 6, but after looking at all the clocks in the house, the girl was convinced that her cell phone had also hit something in her head. She had overslept, and not just overslept. It was already lunchtime. Uncles, aunts, and uncles were due back soon. And what would they find when they came in? How their daughter had drunkenly lain around until 3 p.m. and was suffering from a hangover. Sophia ran to the bedroom and started to wake her sister. She didn't respond. She must have been tired for 2 days. "Alice, please get up," Sophia shouted. Finally, the sister began to show signs of life. She slowly opened one eye and immediately squeezed it shut from the bright light. Wu tangled herself in the blanket with her head and wanted to continue sleeping, but Sophia wouldn't let her. "Alice, get up. Otherwise you will live on the street." Sophia kept shouting, "What street? My mother doesn't care." Alice moaned, reluctant to get up. "And you don't care about me either. It'll be my fault. We've been through this before. Don't set me up, please." But the sister continued to lie there. She rolled back to her knees and soon heard the sound of keys turning in the keyhole. They had come in. Sophia sat down on a chair beside Alice's bed and stared at her. At that moment, Aunt Kelly entered the room in her horribly tattered coat. "What is going on here?" In a daze? She asked. She was clearly not in the best of moods. She worked at the grocery store and often came in terribly tired. The world was full of inadequate people, and all those people wanted to eat and came to her store. At times, Sophia even felt sorry for her aunt. But then she remembered how unfair and cruel she was to her husband and to her, and her opinion remained the same. Sophia hated her, but there was no way to move out either. Even with a job, renting an apartment seemed impossible. Often as a child, Sophia spent her evenings in the entryway, as she was kicked out of the apartment for every misdemeanor. It was the kind of upbringing they justified it now. But sometimes she was kicked out of the entrance, and she would walk around the city at night like that, even in the bitter cold. And in this northern seaside town, they really were terrible. Now Sophia did not want to repeat such a sad experience of her biography, because she was already 19, which meant that they could not provide her with housing for a long time. Aunt Kelly knew the law well. How did she always brag? Especially the obvious ones. Yeah, Alice was sick. Sophia lied, stroking her sister. She didn't say a word, and rightly so. Did she have a cold or something? Aunt Kelly couldn't believe it. "I'm not sick," screamed Alice. "I have a headache." Her mother touched her forehead. It didn't feel hot, and then it was like a brick hit her. "But the breath is on me." Alice didn't even try to resist. Sophia, on the other hand, couldn't accept the fact that she was going to die. "You smell like an alcoholic." Kelly was indignant. Then she looked at Sophia. "Haven't you been keeping an eye on your sister? I came to you about it yesterday, Sunday. You said you did. What did you say?" "That you were interrupted by Aunt Kelly in a rage. She's leaving the house because you're a pain in the ass." Sophia was taken aback by the remark. It wasn't so much unfair as it was horrifyingly stupid. It was impossible to even argue with it. It was simply humiliating. So, in order not to participate in the circus, she decided to just leave. "I thought you and I were finally friends," she said one last time. The girl's eyes filled with fear and shame. Sophia left the house and merged through the streets of the city. She didn't know whether to be sad or angry, or just to forget about the whole situation. She didn't care what was waiting for her tomorrow. She opened her phone. 10 missed calls from Kate, her good friend, from high school, 2 from her supervisor at the university, and 1 from Alice. The last one upset her the most. How could she do this? After everything Sophia had done for her, saved her from that check on that guy, helped at night, even left her pills in the morning. It seemed so nonsensical now. Sophia felt used. She wanted to cry. So she did. "I sat down on some swings and burst into tears. It started to freeze with a nasty rain, but the girl didn't go anywhere. It seemed that the rain, on the contrary, helped her to cope with difficulties. In such freshness, she thought better. The soft, moist air gave her strength. She didn't know how much time had passed. She didn't care about anything, but her thoughts were interrupted by an interesting call from an unknown number. "Hello," Sophia answered indifferently. Silence. No one answered. She wanted to drop the call, but finally she heard Sophia's voice. "Are you all right?" asked Jacob. Yes, but the girl was surprised. She looked at the screen of the phone. Her shift at the cafe had started an hour ago. Today she was losing everywhere on all fronts. "Why aren't you here?" Concerned? Her boyfriend asked her. "I'm just," and the emotions came in a river again. Only this time they were even more. It was all the unrelenting pain from all those years. She was so tired. She'd been through too much hardship in her 19 years. First, the death of her parents, then the long and hopeless years of living with indifferent and even cruel relatives. Universal injustice. The guy seemed to hear those sobs and understood everything. "Where are you now?" Just and asked him in the park, in that damn park. And the memories came back with renewed vigor. This was where she had spent her entire childhood until their parents died. This was the swing she'd been rocked on, and this was the slide she'd ridden on. "Run, run here," my girl shouted her mother, smiling. Sophia ran to her mother's arms. She was still not walking well, but she tried to take every step. "That's right, let's go to Daddy's. He made pizza," my mother exclaimed happily. Sophia smiled back. These days were so bright, full of happiness. Sunny will be here soon. Don't be naughty. Please. You're a big girl now, said Mom, adjusting the sick girl's scarf. Mom sat in the front seat and Sophia in the back. She had a very high fever, and they were on their way to the hospital. Let us. But Mom didn't have time to say anything. The car crashed into the pole at such a tremendous speed that the parents were killed instantly. The girl suffered multiple injuries. When she was taken to the hospital, the doctors couldn't understand how she could have survived. The pillar so crumpled the car that there was only a tiny piece of space left, and in that space was a little girl. She was operated on for hours. She was in a cast for another year. Her relatives weren't found right away, and poor Sophia lived for a couple of months in an orphanage. But even then, the hell didn't end. When her aunt and uncle took her in, she was able to realize what it was like to be unwanted. In what part did Sophia bring her out of her thoughts? The voice from the phone? The girl didn't answer for what seemed like a full minute. Memory alley, she answered. Sit there and don't go anywhere, the guy muttered and hung up, and Sophia was alone with her thoughts again. She had grown up to be a strong person. The hardships had hardened her, but sometimes she just ran out of internal battery. And then she just wanted to be a happy kid like the ones she met on the streets of the city. The same fun-loving teenager roaming the night city with her company. She had become an adult too quickly, and very often that loneliness just wished her from the inside out. At a transitional age, she even considered suicide. None of her classmates or teachers had any idea about it. Of course, not to mention the family she grew up in. Nobody cared about her. She'd always been a good girl and got straight A's. But would they know how hard those grades were for her? How hard she had to get up every day at 6 o'clock a.m. to be the best, so that everyone would be proud of her mother and father. So that one day they would say, "Ah, what kind of child did they raise?" She wanted to thank them for the precious and unfortunately short time they had with her. Did you hear a voice from behind? She seemed to have disconnected from the world for a long time again. The girl turned around. Jacob stood in front of her. He invited her to sit on the bench that was opposite the swing. I sobbed so terribly, Sophia. The tears flowed again and again. This circle is endless. Jacob moved closer to her and hugged her as tightly as one hugs the most dear person. Why is the world so cruel? Why are people so evil? There is not a drop of humanity and compassion in them. Sophia cried. You're wrong. Not all people are like that, Sophia, not all. There are light people, and they outnumber the bad ones. You just haven't met them yet. Everything in my life is going wrong. Why should I suffer so much? But sometimes to grow a strong man, you have to give him the right soil. Jacob got a look full of condemnation and disapproval. Sophia's tantrum immediately stopped. She just looked at him indignantly. Well, I mean, strong people should. Jacob began to justify himself, because he was embarrassed by that angry look of his interlocutor. Yes, I understand. Do not continue firmly and indifferently, she interrupted him. I don't understand why you say that to me. I'm pouring my heart out to you. Did I ask to be made strong? I just wanted a happy childhood like everyone else. I wanted Barbie toys. I wanted games with my friends. I wanted home, pies on Sundays. Mommy's caring hands. Nothing special, just a normal, loving family. And what did I get? Just anger and judgment in the eyes of others. We don't have the money for your whims. You should be thankful we took you in, shouldn't you? I understand. I'm sorry. I'm a bad friend. Now, Sophia's starting to feel sorry for him. She's no different from the people who hurt her, just as cruel and insolent. She felt ashamed of her words. Jacob just wanted to support her. I'm sorry, I'm just emotional, I know. That's no excuse. What's your problem? Careful, asked the guy me. I got kicked out of the house, or rather, no, I left. I was sick of the people I see every day. Alice, that's your sister. So I thought you two had a good relationship. You were so worried about her. I thought I did too, but she turned out to be nothing more than a common traitor. I'm so sorry. There was a long silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves. The rain had long since stopped, and so had the girl's hysterics. It was as if the weather depended on her mood. It was overcast now. It had been dark outside for a long time. The lanterns were burning brightly, illuminating this gloomy alley. The cold was creeping through her clothes, and it felt like it had gotten into her heart. Sophia began to involuntarily grit her teeth. "Are you cold?" "Yes," Sophia stretched out. She was no longer hiding what she was feeling. "Come on, I'll take you to a cafe," Jacob suggested. The girl did not refuse. They got into his car and drove off at full speed. To that cafe she already knew. "What are we gonna do?" asked the guy after he made the order. They asked Eric for 2 croissants and 2 mugs of cocoa. He looked at them strangely, but didn't say anything. Sophia guessed what he was thinking. They looked like a real couple. She didn't try to prove otherwise, but smiled and went to the table. "What do you mean?" the girl asked. "You've been kicked out of your house. You have nowhere to live. What are you going to do?" "Well, I think I'll stay with a friend for the first time, and then I'll earn some money and rent a room in some hostel." "No hostel." Jacob rejected the idea right away. "I realize that I may be imposing my society, but I'm ready to help you with housing. I have a large apartment in the center. I live there alone. However, rooms on the whole floor, choose any and move in." The girl thought it was a good offer. However, the price may not be. And this guy was clearly hinting at something. "How much do you want?" asked Sophia. "It will be enough for me that you go to work in my coffee shop." "No, it doesn't work that way," the girl cut him off. The boy turned away, as if he was offended. However, after a couple seconds of thought, he turned around again. "All right. You know, nowadays there is a tendency for people living in the same apartment to do things for each other. Since it's my apartment and you want to live in it, you have to make me breakfast and lunch. That is, what will be before your shift. Here is a proposal to live in the apartment of your boss." Sophia's thinking, "I'm your friend. We've only known each other for a couple days, but in those couple days I've already driven you home on my way to pick up your drunk sister. Listen to all your heart itches, and now I'm trying to calm you down here at the coffee shop where you're on probation, by the way." Sophia smiled at these arguments. And it was all true, wasn't it? "Let me think about it for a while. I'll stay at my friend's place for the time being," the girl finally answered. "Okay, but my offer won't last forever. One day you will come, and the door of my apartment will be closed for you," Jacob said grimly. But then laughed. "Oh my God, you should have seen your face. What are you like?" But Sophia did not allow herself to be insulted by her boss, no matter how good and funny he was. He was and still is her boss. Finally, Eric brought them croissants and joked too. "Croissants straight from France for 2 lovers. Eric," Sophia shouted indignantly after him, unable to overcome the smile on her face. "This guy knows how to tease." "We're getting to the point where we're all coming together," Jacob remarked. "You're old to me. What are you, 25? How dare you say I'm old?" Naively indignant guy, and smeared the girl's lip with cream from the croissant. Ta soiled him in return. Like 2 children, they began to play merrily with their food. Laughter spread throughout the coffee shop, along with the aroma of chicken. Then they calmed down. Sophia dared to ask a risky question. "But seriously, how did you get to this point in your 25s? To have a Mercedes and a coffee shop? Ordinary income is definitely not enough." "I just worked with my brain," Jacob said, eating a croissant. "In a way, I've been saving money since I was a kid. And even then I started small businesses, selling apples or cookies. And as an adult, the stakes got higher, but the money got bigger." "Well, that deserves respect," summarized the girl, twirling a mug of cocoa in front of her eyes. "Listen, it's getting late. Let me drive you to your friend's house. In order to come to her, you have to warn her first." Sophia laughed and took out her cell phone. She dialed Kate's number. It beeped. Yes, Kate's melodious voice answered. "Hi." Sophia said hello. "Here's the deal. Anyway, I'd like to spend the night." "What's up?" "Kelly did something again, and not just Kelly." Okay, you'll tell me everything. You're welcome to come over. You don't have my keys. I left them at home. I'm not going back there, you know? Well, you knew you'd come running to me. All right, I'm finishing rehearsal, and you'll be eating in an hour. It's at the coffee shop now. Oh, you're talking in riddles. Well, walk to my house. I think I'll be there by then. Thank you. Sophia said thank you and hung up. She looked at Jacob with joy in her eyes. He was waiting for a suggestion, a request, an idea, any word. Well, what can I say? The guy couldn't take it anymore. She said she could sleep over, but she won't be home for another hour. It's a 20-minute drive from here, and it's an hour on foot. So I can walk you home. Why are you being such a schoolboy? Sure, that's what I'm saying. And Jacob and Sophia walked down the dark alleys of their town. They discussed the weather, animal work, anything that didn't concern their personal lives. Jacob realized that Sophia needed to take her mind off of it. On the way, they met a strange man who was showing tricks, and who in the middle of the day would want to show tricks on the street. But there are inadequates in the world. They watched for a while, pulling out the endless rope, jumping deck of cards, and other funny nonsense. Jacob shoved a magician some kind of bill in his hands. After looking at it, he rounded his eyes and made a theatrical bow. He quickly collected all his props and left. Finally, they reached Kate's house. They got there 10 minutes earlier than they'd expected. Well, I think it's time to say goodbye here, Sophia declared, looking straight into Jacob's eyes. It was nice spending time with you. Look, I know you're not up to it right now, but you wouldn't want to see me again. I'm sorry. Take a walk with me, maybe on the waterfront. It's such a beautiful view sometimes. I know you've lived here all your life, but still, maybe I can show you something you've never seen. Well, we'll see, Sophia replied hesitantly. Jacob seemed to be in a hurry. Jacob nodded sternly, smiled, and walked back on foot because his car was left at the coffee shop. The poor guy will now walk an hour and more to this place. He'll get a cab. He had money to spare. Sophia thought so and was about to sit down on the bench waiting for her friend. But then she jumped out of the bushes like a tigress from the ambush and slowly and cunningly smiling in a full face approached her friend in circles. Well, who was it? And how long have you been together? Kate literally poured Sophia with questions. Sophia looked at her with an indignant face, but immediately she burst out laughing. That's just my boss. The girl laughed. Wow, my friend didn't know you were such a hothead. I thought you were a shy gray mouse, and here's the boss. Keep your dirty fantasies to yourself. And the mouse thing was kind of offensive. But really, laughed Kate, walking up to the entrance and pressing the code. Sophia was still pouting her lips. She was hurt that her best friend thought she was a gray mouse, even though in many ways she was right. Yes, even compared to her, the beautiful and bright girl is studying at the theater and already has some small roles. Finally, they entered the apartment. There was a mouse hanging in the refrigerator, as usual. There was nothing to eat. Kate never cooked at home. That's why there was always no food. Often she slept in the theater because the next morning there were rehearsals. It was a long way from the theater to the house. They sat down in the kitchen and drank tea and cookies. Well, tell me why. How, when? Why? Kate began, taking another sip. It was the usual. Only this time they didn't kick me out. I left home on my own. And Sophia told the whole story from start to finish. He didn't forget to mention Jacob, who now looked like a hero in Kate's eyes. When are you getting married to him? Kate asked after an hour of conversation. Kate? Sophia was indignant. But at the same time she laughed. Why did you paint him in such colors? It's not my fault. I didn't see him in the dark, but I think he's as beautiful as God. Sophia thought for a moment and then answered honestly. He's handsome and smart. He has all the qualities of a perfect man and partner. But something still alarms me, something that makes me not to cross over. That line of ordinary friendship. The girls went to bed all night. Sophia couldn't sleep properly. She kept having nightmares. She woke up almost every hour, Aunt Kelly saying horrible things, Jacob killing her at work. Was it a completely nonsensical delusion or not? In the morning, Sophia decided to take her temperature, and her hunch was confirmed. The temperature was very high. Kate was doing something in the kitchen. Sophia wanted to call out to her, but her voice was gone too. She shouldn't have gone out in that cold yesterday in a thin, unlined coat. She didn't bring anything warm from home. She basically didn't take anything at all. Finally, Kate came into the room and saw her friend showing her the thermometer. She walked over and looked at the board. 38.7. Sophia only shrugged her shoulders. She had no voice at all. At first she tried to make some sounds, but it was singing. No one would ever understand. Don't you dare charge me. I've got a gig in a month, Kate declared. I'll get you some medicine and tea. Stay home and heal. Don't go anywhere. Sophia followed her friend's instructions. She switched on the TV series and took the tea and medicine every hour. The temperature was brought down, but she felt terrible. Suddenly, she remembered about work. It was already the second day that she did not report there, although it was her probationary period. The girl decided to notify Jacob urgently. When she went to her phone, she saw 3 missed ones from Eric. And where did he get her phone from? However, she only texted Jacob, "Hi. I'm writing to warn you that I won't be in. I understand the probationary period thing, but I'm sick." It took 2 seconds to text back. "Oh my God. There's a fever, a cough, a sore throat. You don't have to worry so much. It's just a cold." After a few more seconds, the phone rang. Sophia answered the call. But in response to Jacob's agitated questions, she could only squeeze out a hoarse hiss, breaking down into a horrible cough. "You cannot answer," worried interlocutor. "Write me urgently. Where are you still at Kate's?" "Yes," Sophia said faintly. He hung up immediately. Sophia couldn't believe it. Just now he was worrying about her like she had a terminal infection. And then he just hung up on her. What kind of man is that? But it soon became clear why he'd done that. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. The girl reluctantly got up and crept to the door to see who it brought. I looked through the peephole and gasped. Jacob stood there in his usual classic black suit and tie, but with flowers and a basket of fruit and sweets. She hurriedly opened the door for him. It wasn't a trick of the eye. The guy standing at the threshold really turned out to be her boss and had brought such fancy goodies. Sophia shunned with a gesture, inviting the guy into the apartment. If even she could speak, she still wouldn't be able to give out anything at the moment out of amazement. Jacob, with a hostess look, walked into the tiny kitchen, put on the kettle, and pulled out a basket of some bags. "Here," he said triumphantly. "Now you drink this, and you will feel much better." The warmth enveloped the drink with the aroma of berries, honey, and some herbs. It is nice to warm Sophia on a sore throat. A few minutes after absorbing the drink, she, to her surprise, was able to speak almost normally. "Listen, do you have such talents for a doctor?" She joked to hide her embarrassment. "And you are so caring. A girl would be happy to be your wife, though I doubt you need a wife." "Really, maybe I do. And that's why I care so much about my future bride," Jacob replied with a hint. He set a basket of all sorts of tasty treats on the nightstand, and on the bed he dumped a whole bag of medicine, so it was for his throat. He pointed to the packaging. "This is for a runny nose. And this is to make you feel normal. And this?" The girl grinned, pointing at the beautiful flowers that he brought and carefully placed in a vase neatly, and a small bouquet of the freshest roses. "And what was all this for?" Sophia looked at Jacob, who seemed embarrassed and wanted to say something. "But how did you get Kate's apartment number?" The girl began to suspect something wrong. The guy smiled. She had clearly figured him out. However, contrary to all expectations, he didn't crack and answered, "I ran it through the database." "There are connections. Lie more. Why did you have to come here?" "You called. I just wanted to help. Is that so bad?" He timidly, almost theatrically, looked at the girl with a guilty look, but she did not hide her disapproval. Then Jacob decided to confess. "Okay, I called Kate. I confess. I memorized the number while you were calling her from the cafe yesterday. I have a very good visual memory. But she also said you were very sick and was happy to give me your address." The guy also paused briefly. "She also told me to take you with me because she doesn't want you to get her sick before an important performance." Sophia shook her head. "That's what she's like. And she's also called a friend." "Pack your things. We're leaving," Jacob announced, dropping the important executive look. Why did Sophia continue to resent him? "Why should I go with you? You promised yesterday to think about the proposal, and today you are sick. Let's take care of your friend's health together. She really shouldn't be sick right now." The girl didn't agree right away. She thought about it for a long time, whether it was worth leaving her friend, but eventually decided to leave her colleague. Kate even now did not need a man who could not take care of himself, and Jacob had a large apartment. She wouldn't be much in his way there, and though it was hard to admit it, he would actually be able to take care of her if something terrible happened. It was so nice to feel needed, to feel cared for. For the last 10 years, if Sophia got sick and had to be treated by herself, indifferent relatives didn't even bother to bring her tea. Not that to buy medicine. They called a doctor at home to look like a doctor. The girl herself opened the door to him because everyone was at work and the old grandmother was always sick and could not take care of a sick child. The doctor examined her, wrote a prescription, and gave her instructions. "Please, you write me something inexpensive." Embarrassed, she asked the doctor, "We don't have much money." When she left, the district doctor, who knew all his patients and had become accustomed over the years to the way things were in this family, left her some cheap aspirin and paracetamol tablets, something for throat strips from the meager supplies the clinic had provided. And Sophia dissolved herself to make tea with raspberries, and then also listened to reproaches. "Why did you open that jar? Who authorized it?" At 14, she accidentally learned from an employee of the Social Security office that she, it turns out, had been receiving survivor's benefit all this time. That's her, not her aunt or uncle. They were only her guardians, who were obliged to take proper care of her. Humbly, Sophia had caused quite a scandal at home. And since then, the aunt had somewhat moderated her angry outbursts, fearing that the girl would complain. But of course, any kindred love was never out of the question. The apartment Jacob had brought her to was indeed everything he had described. There were 5 or 6 rooms, a huge living room, a kitchen, a dining room almost as big as a cafe, a full-wall plasma. He obviously wasn't poor. The guy showed Sophia to her room, and she immediately flopped onto the warm, soft bed. Everything here was like a hotel, even the servants coming in. After half an hour, Jacob suggested watching a movie, and he prepared delicious cocktails. They had a good time, and by the next day, there was no trace left of the cold. 2 weeks passed. Sophia's probationary period was finally over, and she was able to go to work. Very quickly, Sophia understood how things worked and was receiving rave reviews from visitors. She continued to live with Jacob and fulfill his only condition: breakfast, lunch, cleaning up after cooking. When there was strength left, she even made dinner. The guy treated her very kindly, helped her with her studies. Together with her, watched her favorite TV series. They lived as the most real friends. Kate, of course, had already married them and her incessantly. But for that, she was an emotional and passionate actress. She certainly had a very well-developed fantasy, although maybe it wasn't a fantasy at all. Everyone noticed some kind of connection between Jacob and Sophia, but they themselves ignored the attention. Sophia ignored it. No one could say anything to Jacob in his eyes, of course. She also managed, living in his apartment, to skillfully avoid his advances and evade all the signs of attention that he constantly gave her. She didn't care about relationships right now, especially not with her boss. She wanted to earn enough money and go to St. Petersburg. Sophia dreamed of becoming a designer, and this city, as it seemed to her, was ideal for such a creative profession. Kate shared her dream. Such a creative nature needed to walk the streets of the world's most aesthetic city, not a cold one. About New York to Murmansk. Listen, Jacob began one day, looking into Sophia's room. "You can come to the cafe tonight at 7 o'clock. Sophia was reading a boring textbook and was very surprised and at the same time intrigued by this proposal. After all, today was her day off. Why? Eric has some problems and he won't show up for work today, and there is no one else to replace him. You'll get a nice bonus." The guy cheered her up, and when I asked him to, he didn't replace me. "Why should I help him?" "Because I'll fire you," Jacob threatened. A joke, of course. However, his look was very determined and serious. Sophia was very angry, but there was nothing to do. She didn't want to peel on her jacket, put on her boots, and swore at the bus. And after all, it had been raining outside all day and there were puddles in the icy wind. They looked more like oceans. But Sophia has always been a prudent girl, so she didn't put on my shoes directly. When she arrived at the establishment, no one was there. No lights were on the sign said closed. Sophia sings from the cold as she looked around the building. If this was a joke, it wasn't funny at all. After all, she might get sick again. Already she was angry with Jacob. She was falling on people not in her hands. They were always so cold in hers, even with warm gloves. This is the one she called out into the void. But on the street, only a lonely lantern was burning from the last leaves icy raindrops fell to the ground. But just disgusting weather. In such weather, it is better to sit at home under a warm blanket, watch a TV series, or read a good book, rather than stand at the entrance to a closed coffee shop and wait for something unknown. The girl stood like that for about 10 minutes, even knocked on the door. And then she realized that it was a pointless waste of time. She was about to leave angry and upset. Suddenly, she heard a click. Turning around, sleepily, she noticed that the lights in the coffee shop were on, but not fully. It was on only at the cash register, and the entire room was in darkness. But what startled her the most was the back door that opened, which overlooked a staff yard. Only employees of any kind who were adequate and had any sense of self-preservation were allowed in there. People would have run as far away from here as possible, but not Sophia. She was completely consumed with interest. She was so intrigued by this strange chain of events that she decided to go with the scenario of whoever had planned it. She slowly approached the door. The corridor that led to the kitchen was completely dark, but after a couple seconds, the light came on there too. Going there was a little exciting and scary. What if a maniac was waiting for her there? But she did not know why she decided to take such a risk. Sophia went through the whole corridor and came to the kitchen, which was immersed in darkness. The girl even swore to herself, how many times can it be? This darkness and mystery. She was already sick of it. Finally, the light came on. The bulb shone exclusively on a round table covered with a white tablecloth. At the table sat a dark figure. The girl could not see the face. The man had his back turned to her. Sophia was a little afraid, but somehow she understood what was expected of her. She decided to take a seat at the table and observe what would happen next. The man's face was still in shadow, but now the girl could get a better look at what was on the table. A bottle of red wine on ice, 2 glasses, and 2 plates. It looked like a date. "It's good to see you." Sophia, in an enchanting voice, said Jacob, turning to face her and smiling affectionately. After his words, candles were lit everywhere and music played. It was like some kind of magic. Now the girl saw red rose petals on the table. And at this moment he took out from somewhere, quite like that street magician, pulled out of his pocket different things. A huge bouquet of red roses. Sophia even gasped in surprise. "Why did you have to go to all that trouble?" Sophia asked, smiling. Of course she liked this pleasant surprise. No one had ever done anything like this before. It was a complete surprise for her. But on the other hand, she was completely unprepared for the first romantic creation in her life of an ugly dress, no hair or even makeup, let alone manicure and expensive accessories. Just a bundle quickly gathered from her unruly drinking hair. Yes, pink lip gloss, so she wouldn't be oohed and awed about Sophia. This wasn't how Sophia had envisioned her first date. "Was there something you didn't like?" Jacob asked excitedly, pouring wine into her glass. No, you arranged everything wonderfully. But you could have at least given me a hint." But I had hinted. And then Sophia remembered how he'd given her 1,000 compliments in a day, candy and silly little things, asking her what kind of wine she preferred. He even said that she could go to the hairdresser instead of lying on the couch all day. She even resented him then. Turns out she was wrong. Jacob had indeed hinted at it many times, and she felt terribly ashamed of it. And then an unexpected participant in the meeting came to light. It was Eric, and that's when the puzzle in Sophia's head came together. "Oh, you slay bandits." The girl laughed at Eric. "But at least you could have warned me that I had to dress up." "Jacob forbade me," smiled Eric, putting the dish on the table. It was for cookies, partridges under some very delicious smelling sauce. Sophia threw an indignant yet appreciative look at her friend. After half an hour of eating the delicious wall and chatting cheerfully with Jacob, they moved on to more frank topics. My parents died when I was only 9 years old, Sophia told him. And my aunts and uncles are not the best people in the world. And my cousin wasn't so lucky either, Sophia complained, emptying another glass of wine. Listen, you need something stronger for this conversation. The couple had not had their second glass of wine. And of course, it was more like two friends crying into each other's vest than a real date. Finally, they finished dessert and were about to go home. Of course, the fact that they lived in the same apartment came in handy. They had already reached home safely. And then Jacob stopped her. He turned the slightly drunk girl to himself and said, Sophia, I'm such an asshole. I did not just start this date, and I did not dare to tell you. I had a specific purpose, namely to ask you to be together with me. I'm already with you. Stretched, united they, not understanding anything in the use of alcohol, very affected her ability to think logically and correctly perceive what I said I mean. Would you like to be my girlfriend? Sophia thought about it for a moment. She wanted to think it over. She wanted to weigh the pros and cons. But the adrenaline raging in her head answered for her. Yes, definitely yes. She took the risk and laughed merrily. The boy stared at her for a long time. He didn't get the meaning of what she said. Had she really said yes, or was it just the drink? And is the wine in her talking? Then he took her face in the palms of his hands, turned it toward him, and imprinted on her warm pink lips, smelling of soft cream and tart cabernet. A passionate long kiss. She responded to him without any resistance. They spent a wonderful night together, and in the morning a happy but slightly discouraged Sophia was graced with a tray of coffee-scented Italian cheese fresh croissants and orange jam served right in bed. You are the most beautiful girl in the world, Jacob told her, kissing her tenderly. I just can't believe you're so self-sufficient, so stunning. Turn to me, embarrassed Sophia. Jesus, Sophia. He rolled his eyes and laughed. Why do you think I've been courting you since that moment? The moment you crossed the threshold of my office? You have really low self-esteem. You need to do something about it, but stay out of it. He added, quickly seeing her eyes change expression and her lips tighten. Look at you. He pulled her out of bed and set her in front of the mirror. Look at what you see there. Sophia looked at herself for the first time as if from the outside, standing in a light nightgown. Beside him, she saw a slender girl of good height, and with a fine figure looking at her from the looking glass from somewhere on the other side of the unknown. This stranger had brilliant smoke and eyes with the luster of a jeweled pianist, eyebrows clearly drawn by nature itself, curves, beautiful, arched, pretty, pink lips not so plump as those of maidens. That solidly pumped nowadays themselves with silicone, but delicate and juicy, thick, fluffy eyelashes of the same dark shade as eyebrows, contacted with light, different golden waves in some places from nature hair. Not with the silk cascade that served her shoulders, her hair was always in the way, always getting in her eyes, and how she had never noticed before how beautiful it was. So smiling and stroking her snowy shoulder, Jacob asked, You have such peculiar lighting in here, Sophia told him off, and hurried away from the mirror. But it's not a matter of admiration at all. You're a real beauty. How can you not see it? Jacob continued to enlighten her. And natural. You don't even wear makeup, do you? Yes, Sophia admitted with embarrassment. I don't even have the money for it. You don't need it, he exclaimed. No, I'll buy you the best if you want, but you're stunning natural beauty. You know, honey, come here, I'll show you something. He sat down on the bed and beckoned her to him. So I've dated a lot of girls, but they've all just spent long hours in beauty parlors, trying to improve themselves, getting their lips, eyebrows, nails, eyelashes done. Siphoned off fat, enlarged breasts, added silicone in every conceivable and unthinkable place, drew themselves permanent makeup. Sometimes I felt like I was dating mechanical dolls. After these procedures, they all look the same to me, you know. I don't get it. Why girls go to so much trouble to kill their individuality? You're different, you're warm, you're real. He put his arms around her, pulled her against him. Sophia was dizzy with happiness again, and she was completely out of control. The next day, their whole neighborhood knew about this amazing news. First, of course, was Sophia, said Kate. Then came Eric and some friends of Jacob. At first, Sophia was very embarrassed. She is dating her boss, to think about it. But with time, she got used to it. She insisted on continuing to go to work as before. There were still no privileges for her. Everything was very fair and just. Jacob and Sophia, it seemed to her, had managed to separate work and personal life. For the first 2 months, everything went just fine. And the girl hoped that it would always be like this. Wash the dishes, please. There's a mountain of them. And soon there will be nowhere to put them, Eric asked her. He was still in charge of the coffee shop. Sophia had been very tired the last few days. Whether from her studies, or from her new relationship, or from everything. Immediately, she wanted some kind of freedom. A regular free time that she could spend alone with herself like she used to. But now she didn't have a single free moment. Jacob was filling up her entire space. Sighing, she swore tiredly into the kitchen to do the dishes. And why couldn't they just buy a dishwasher? The process would be so much easier and more enjoyable. She looked down at her plate. Food residue stuck to it. Greasy sauce stains, and a fit of terrible nausea swept over her. Sophia did not understand her reasons and immediately ran to the toilet. It was all right. She did not even vomit. However, continued to torment, like a new recruit on the ship. Dishes are clean. I'll probably go home, said Sophia tiredly, taking off her apron. Everything's fine, worried Eric, confused by her appearance. You look sickly. I look fine. It's okay, sighed the girl. Just tired. And she left. The next day, she planned a trip to visit her favorite friend, Katya. That finally took a decent role, not the main, of course, but not on the role of the tree, as last year. The friend was so happy about her success that she decided to call the closest people to visit and celebrate it. Sophia bought a cake for this event, good champagne, and went to visit. Oh, darling, thanks for coming over for that cake. You shouldn't have. Kate was there to greet her. Sophia entered the apartment in high spirits. There were already 3 girls from Kate's acting class and a couple of boys from the same. She said hello to everyone and sat down on the couch. They played various charades, showed live pictures, and then it came to alcohol. Oh, don't pour, Sophia asked, because she felt nauseous again. Kate noticed this and sat down next to her. And sleepy, you're not feeling well? Concerned? Asked her friend. Sophia sat pale and was about to vomit. She realized it and rushed to the bathroom. Kate ran after her to support her hair. After this process, Sophia started to cry, sinking to the floor right next to the toilet. What's wrong with you? A concerned Kate asked. Should we call an ambulance? No. I'm fine now. Don't. Almost all the guests of the party, who were much more numerous than at the beginning, were crowding around the door. They were offering to help. Some offered a ride home, but Sophia refused. She didn't understand what was going on, and it scared her a lot. Could it be poisoning? Or an allergy to alcohol? One of the girls suggested. Or maybe she was just pregnant, joked one of the guys, for which he immediately got a punch in the back of the head from his girlfriend. This suggestion scared Sophia even more, but she was sure that was not the reason. She had had such urges from bad quality alcohol before. And Kate likes to save money on everything. Maybe she was saving money now too. Kate called Jacob to pick her up. But as soon as her friend brought the phone, Sophia Dahl snatched it out of her hands. What are you doing? Shouted, surprised by the behavior of her friend Kate. Don't call him now. He's busy. How could he be busy at 12 o'clock? He's working. Or maybe he's cheating on you, joked that shallow kid again. But then he and the forbidden one were asked to leave so he wouldn't embarrass Sophia with his inappropriate jokes anymore. Excuse him, he's a complete fool when he's drunk. Kate apologized for the guest. I don't even know how he got here. Jacob's really working. He's got an important project going on and he can't be distracted. Kate, I have a favor to ask, right? What do you want? Can you find someone here who's more or less sober and take me home in a cow I'm afraid to take? The friend looked around at the guests surrounding her. Everyone was already very drunk. Some of them had even had a chicken. Some were lying motionless on the floor. But in the very corner of the room by the balcony sat some quiet kid folding a Rubik's Cube. Kate immediately went over to him. "Hey, can you take that girl over there home?" Kate asked, pointing to Sophia, who was sitting staring at the floor. The guy didn't answer anything, but just nodded affirmatively. He drove Sophia quickly and carefully, and even helped her to the apartment. Sophia only peeked into the study to make sure Jacob was home. He was indeed sitting and working. All her worries turned out to be unfounded. He loves her very much. He would never cheat on her. She didn't bother to go in and strike up a conversation with him. He didn't care about her little problems right now. Sophia just laid down in the warm, soft bed, instantly falling asleep. All night long she was troubled by nightmares. And the fault was the words of that guy that creeped into her head. Maybe she was pregnant. The girl was always afraid of unwanted pregnancy. She wanted to study, build a career, and only then get involved in family life. So to be sure, the next morning she went to the drugstore and bought a test. It was negative. Sophia breathed a sigh of relief, but the nausea was still bothering her. It was clearly a sign of some kind of malfunction in her body. She decided to make an appointment for an ultrasound. Well, congratulations. You're a young mom now. You're eating right, you're taking care of yourself, and I'll see you next month. Then we can do an accurate analysis. You're only 3 weeks along, the doctor said. Sophia was in a terrible state. She felt frightened. Even real shock, she couldn't say a word for a minute. "I'm sorry," she stammered, trying to say something to the doctor, and tears were already coming to her eyes. But the test was negative. Oh, these tests are so unreliable. Sometimes you have to do several of them to be sure of the result. And the only way to be 100% sure is to do an ultrasound. Why are you crying? You're so happy. You're what? Happy? I'm 19 years old. Sophia couldn't take it anymore. She tearfully left the office, holding the picture in her hands. The girl did not know how best to present it to Jacob to say at once and adjust, or maybe just say nothing and have an abortion. These thoughts accompanied her all the way home. And still she decided to call her friend. Kate had never turned away from her, and she would not turn away from her now. "Yes, Sophia, I'm in the middle of rehearsal. Do you have something urgent?" No, Sophia lied, barely suppressing a sob. "Maybe I'll come to you tonight. I have to talk to you." "Oh, of course. You know I'm always ready to discuss the latest gossip." "That's it. I'll see you later." And the friend dropped the call, and Sophia was left to her own thoughts. She didn't want to go home. It seemed shameful, even though she and Jacob had never discussed it. Maybe he wouldn't mind having children, but then all plans for life would go down the drain, because for the next 18 years, everything would be for the child. Of course, they could afford it. Jacob, he's not a poor man. He's achieved a lot on his own. He would certainly not be against children, but what if he was? Sophia could not make a final decision until the evening, and realized that only her friend's advice would help her, or maybe her sympathy, or all together. She waited for her friend for a long time, but finally Kate showed up. They entered the house, poured themselves tea, and finally were able to start a dialogue. "So what's up with you? Did you finally find out what's causing this nausea of yours?" "I did," Sophia said, taking another sip of tea. "Well, tell me why you're so mysterious." "I'm pregnant." "Kate," the girl replied. Kate's eyes immediately widened and the mug of tea almost fell out of her hands. "I'm sorry about that," she interjected. "I'm not going to repeat it. You've heard it all," so thoughtfully stretched out her friend. "What does Jacob say?" "He doesn't know." "He doesn't know," shouted Kate. "Stop yelling, that doesn't know. I don't know how he'll feel about it. I just found out today." Sophia took the ultrasound scan out of her jacket pocket and handed it to the girl. She scrutinized it carefully. "You want my advice?" "Really?" asked Catherine. "Yes, tell Jacob everything. He's a good guy, adequate. Together you will definitely make the right decision. I cannot advise anything in such cases. You're a couple, it's your child, and you have to make your own decision." Sophia decided to follow her friend's advice. The next day at dinner, she will finally tell Jacob everything. Deliciously, Sophia asked her young man in a friendly manner. He happily nodded. You are my favorite cook. Tomorrow we go to the registry office. The guy joked. The girl laughed back, although it was more of a hysterical laugh. Honey, I need to confess something to you, began. She was visible as Jacob immediately tensed up. His face took a serious expression. And what is it? He asked sternly. The girl was covered with sweat, but still decided to pull herself together. Her hands and lips were shaking violently. She was silent for about a minute. Honey, what do you want to confess to me? The guy insisted. I want you to get it right. Basically, I'm pregnant. Jacob froze, turning into a stone figure. Sophia waited fearfully for an answer. Every second was killing her from the inside. Her hands continued to shake and her heart pounded frantically. Pregnant, then, the guy said gloomily. Finally recovered. So? The girl had expected anything but such a question. It was so stupid that it was embarrassing to answer. And what could one say to such a question? I'm sorry. What do you suggest I do? Jacob explained. I certainly wasn't planning on having a child with you, much less an abortion. You mean me, much less me. Shocked and indignant, the girl repeated his expression. She was now recognizing her young man from a new side. How so? You don't fit my status. A common orphan. Hardly fit to be the wife of a respectable man like me. Her grief turned to anger. She was amazed at his cruel words. More importantly, they cut to the heart of the matter. So you didn't plan to marry me. But Sophia, it's nothing personal. It's life. Don't take it so harshly. Did I tell you I wanted to get married? That's harsh. And the fact that you have a child now doesn't tell you anything. But it's still a formality. You had a kid. You don't have a kid. The main thing is not to drag it out. Sophia couldn't listen to any more of this nonsense. She'd had enough. She silently got up from the table, went to her room, gathered her things, and headed for the exit, almost unable to see where she was going because of her tears. Jacob said goodbye. If you leave, you won't find work anywhere else. No one will take you in with a baby in your arms. Goodbye, asshole, Sophia said as indifferently as possible and left. But she had nowhere else to go. It was terribly embarrassing to return to her friend, what she would tell her. The young man, a millionaire, had kicked her out of the house without kicking her out. She left on her own, and Sophia was back where she started in her so-called family. At her aunt and uncle's house, she hadn't been in touch since a week, hadn't charged her phone so she wouldn't be pestered with calls. If anyone came by, they were immediately chased away, saying Sophia wasn't here. Aunt Kelly had been terribly mean to Sophia at first when she confessed her situation, but then she softened. For some reason, she felt sorry for the single mother-to-be. Sophia dropped out of school. She didn't look for any job. She just lay on her bed all day long and thought about how cruel fate was. All her plans came crashing down one day. All relationships faded into oblivion, but one day no one was home. Alice was out again. My aunt and uncle had gone to work and the doorbell rang. Sophia didn't answer it, but it kept ringing and very insistently. Eventually that sound then became annoying. Now Sophia that she had to go to the door and look through the peephole. As she went, she dropped her keys from the nightstand, which caused a distinctive sound that the uninvited visitor obviously heard. Through the thin, cheap door, Sophia took a deep breath. It was Kate. Sophia, open up. I know you're in there. I'll stand here until you open the door, Sophia snapped. Sophia, open up. This is very important. It's about your baby, Kate declared. That intrigued Sophia. In what way? She asked. Open it and you'll find out quickly. The case does not require a possessor. Sophia grudgingly opened the door. Kate immediately rushed into the apartment and grabbed the girl by the arm. Just kidding. There's no news. But I had to get to you somehow, explained her friend hurriedly. Sophia was terribly offended by this. She wanted to break free, but the grip was firm. They had to go to the bedroom to work things out. I know you don't want to listen to anyone right now, Kate began, but I don't care. You're really depressed, and as your best friend, it's my responsibility to support you. So tonight you're going to the theater with me. God, Kate, What theater? What the hell are you talking about? She's starting to whine. Sophia, lying down on the bed, covering herself with a blanket. My theater is opening night, and you have to support me. I could use some support myself. Sophia was indignant. Sophia, if you want me to still be your friend tonight at 7, I look forward to seeing you at the play. With those words, Kate walked away, leaving her friend to ponder. Sophia was hysterical again. She didn't want to go anywhere at all. She hadn't left the house in a week, and she was determined to continue like this indefinitely. But Kate had always been there for her in her darkest moments. She owed it to her to repay her friend with kindness. It would be good for her, too. Sophia got ready, put on makeup, put on a beautiful dress, and entered the theater. The performance lasted an hour and a half. Sophia gave it a hard 3. All the same, young actors still have to study and learn. Kate included, but the costumes were very colorful. After the performance, Kate decided to celebrate this furor, in their opinion, in a cafe. Of course, Sophia was forced to go with them. The girl for a long time refused, however, eventually gave in. Of course, by the will of fate, they went to the very cafe, the cafe that forever linked Sophia with the man who spoiled her life. Oh, Diamond, did you see the duck's face when it jumped on the pole? Kate laughed, holding out an alcoholic cocktail from all this company only Sophia didn't drink. And she felt out of place here. The atmosphere of the cafe was also a terrible pressure. She prayed that she wouldn't accidentally show up at the door. Jacob, guys, I have a headache. I should probably get going. Sophia lied. Even she seemed to make a better actress than these guys. Everyone nodded. Kate offered to walk her out. What did Sophia say? That she was just tired and didn't need any help. That was partly true. This kind of activity after a week of lying on the bed had taken a toll on Sophia. It all happened too fast. Walking out of the cafe, she almost cried. It was raining like a bucket. There was no money for a cab. Her mood was lousy. Kate didn't want to go back to her friends. The girl decided that she was not afraid of anything and walked home. But as soon as she took the first step, something spit out from under her feet. Sophia lifted her foot. In the puddle lay a wallet. She opened it to see if there was any money in it. Maybe she would have had enough for a cab, but there was almost nothing there. Just a couple of crumpled bills, some meaningless coupons, an old bank card and a photograph, a picture. God. Sophia moved closer to the lantern to get a good look at the picture. Really? Yes, it was a picture of her own mother. Here she was so young and beautiful. There was a reason everyone said that Sophia looked a lot like her mother, and so she was. Sophia stood in one place for a long time, not understanding how her late mother's picture had ended up in this purse. But she was too tired to think about it for long. After making her way to her beau's house, she quickly fell asleep. The next day, she decided to go to the very address that was written on the crumpled piece of paper. In Sophia's purse was just throwing that purse away. However, it was necessary to find out how the picture ended up here. The road led her to a huge mansion on the outskirts. It was somehow unbelievable. The house was so richly decorated on the outside that Sophia double-checked the address another 1,000 times. What if she had gotten the wrong place? But no, it was the right place. Sophia rang the doorbell. An elderly man in an expensive suit opened the door a minute later. "What can I do for you?" "Do you have an appointment?" he asked the stranger politely. He seemed to be an employee of the house. The inside of the mansion looked as rich as the outside. Marble floors, glass chandeliers. Hearing voices, a woman in her 50s came out to meet her. It seemed to be the lady of the house herself. She seemed very friendly. After hearing from the girl the reason for her visit, the woman immediately offered her a cup of tea and invited her into the living room. Sophia was interested in her appearance. She reminded her of someone. "My name is Lucy. It's very nice to meet you. So you said you found my wallet?" the lady asked anxiously. Sophia nodded affirmatively. She took the wallet out of her bag and handed it to the hostess. "Oh, thank you, and I searched it. There's nothing of value in it, just one. A picture very dear to me," the woman confessed. "To be honest," Sophia began, taking a sip of tea, "that's why I came to you." The woman raised her perfectly painted eyebrows in surprise. I'm listening to you. Where did you get this picture? It's an old close friend of mine. The woman smiled. My Maria. She and I were actually very close in the past, Lucy said, stroking the photograph as if it were warm and alive. You see, this is my mother, Sophia said. What's the woman's reaction? So you're my monkey's daughter. I didn't know she had children. I haven't seen her in a long time. I thought she was living abroad now. She's dead, Sophia said sharply. The woman's face immediately darkened, her eyes darkened, her lips quivered. How long ago? She asked quietly, as if afraid to cry. It's been 10 years. But explain how you know her. Didn't your mother ever tell you about you? Of course she didn't. Honey, she and I had a terrible fight when we were young, and we never saw each other again. What was the quarrel about, if it's no secret? Sophia was interested. She wanted every detail. For some reason, she felt a connection and support when she heard that this woman knew her mother. There were no secrets. We were both 18 when we were young. Stupid, naive girls. One of us fell in love with a handsome, athletic, well-built guy. Just a dream. All the girls fell for him. Me and your mom were no exception. Of course she got him. I mean, she was so beautiful. You can't take your eyes off her. You look just like her. Dear Lucy smiled sadly, and then she got involved. I started literally chasing this Pavlik. I couldn't let them get away. Although, to be fair, I didn't even like him at all. It was a matter of competition. Lucy giggled with embarrassment. I was such a fool back then. I ended up beating Pavel away from her. And I quit almost immediately. So you didn't need the prize, did you, your friend? I mean, she really loved him. Of course, we had a fight. We never spoke again. Then I killed that friendship with my own hands. Lucy got in over her head. And I still blame myself for that. So when I want to do something rash, I always look at her picture and remember what a huge mistake I made. You can't do that, you know, girl. Yeah, Sophia could only reply after hearing that. She was amazed by the story. Yeah, things could have been different with Mike and me. How did you find the wallet where I put it? I was leaving the cafe next to the theater, you know, and I found it in a puddle. As soon as I saw my mom's picture, I was interested. I'm sorry. There was hardly any money there. I didn't want to come all the way out here for nothing. You're a long way from home. Oh, what rage. Hapa was leaving her clumsy nephew and was so angry with him that she didn't even notice the purse was missing. The nephew was interrogated by Sophia. Yes, he owns this cafe, or rather, how he owns it. He got everything from me. Daddy, he had you as an idiot. So I decided to help it not to teach. But he manages to screw up even this simple business. What are you gonna do? Isn't your nephew's name Jacob by any chance? Almost frightened, Sophia asked. Yes. How did you guess? Sweetie? Asked the woman. It turns out that I know your nephew very well. Sophia suddenly told the woman everything that had happened to her. She did not forget to mention that he had cruelly lied to her, saying that he had achieved it all on his own. No, look at him. What an impudent and deceitful man. The woman was outraged. When it all came out, Jacob finally had to answer for it. Lucy threatened him with disinheritance, after which Jacob had to recognize the child. A month later, he and Sophia were married, but it was just a formality. After all, Sophia's child had to be born in a legal marriage. Now we can divorce indifferently, Sophia said, throwing the documents to the guy on the table. She herself is already afraid of the baby. It was born 3 days ago. And of course, the first thing the young mother was going to do was to end this horrible story. Jacob silently signed the papers and they were officially divorced. What a relief it was for both of them. Sophia no longer felt anything but disgust for him. As for his feelings, that remained behind the scenes, as they say. Lucy had made the newborn they named Dimitri their heir instead of Jacob. She had never had children, and she had long ago become disillusioned with her nephews. Sophia, at her insistence, moved into this rich house. The mother's friend did not dote on the baby, walked with him, fussed with him, did everything to Sophia more rest, hired 2 nannies, provided the young mother with everything so that she did not need anything, assigned her a monthly allowance. Sophia was reluctant at first, but Lucy convinced her that such generosity was not for nothing. "Sweetheart, this is the least I have to do for my sweet girl. Maria," she said affectionately, "don't deprive me of the opportunity to be at ease with myself again." Sophia understood her position and agreed. The court ordered Jacob to pay alimony to his son, which the guy did not like, but it was pointless to argue with the law. Everything was getting better in Sophia's life. She met a friend, Kate from the theater school, and a romantic relationship began between them. It was still hard to tell if they had a future. However, the romance is the same quiet guy who drove her home somehow, took great care of the girl, adopted her son, and did everything that a well-mannered person with good intentions should do. 6 months passed in this situation, and Lucy became seriously ill. She was lying in the hospital under a drip. For a whole month, the doctors had already tombed the loved ones for a sad outcome. Sophia visited every day this woman who had saved her life and pulled her out of the abyss. "Honey, I'm so glad you're happy too." Lucy spoke softly. Sophia sat next to her and held her hand. It was very hard for her to fight the emotions that came over her. But she held on. "Can I open the drawer, please?" Lucy asked. Sophia complied with the request and took out from there many sheets of paper, stapled with a violin. "This is my testament." She coughed on almost every word, and it was scary to look at. "It's all signed and signed for sure. I wish you the happiest of lives. And Roma, he's a good guy, you watch out. Lucy, honey." Sophia cried, looking at the dying woman. "Don't do anything." She just didn't have time to say anything. Her heart stopped, but the woman had said enough and done more, and died with herself, just as she wanted to after the funeral. Sophia scrutinized the documents. All of her inheritance went into her control, until little Mike came of age. Lucy had left something to Jacob personally as well. She left only his business, which eventually went under. Lucy bought up her guilt to her friend by doing such a good deed. Her soul was definitely going to be at peace now. There was only one last thing left to do. One frowning, windy afternoon in the city cemetery, the young woman, accompanied by an earnest companion, watched the solemn ceremony of burying the ashes of the late Lucy next to her parents' grave. Following this, a new plaque appeared on a fresh headstone. "From now and forever, you and I are together. No foolishness, no vanity can separate us now. Maria plus Lucy equal eternal friendship." These were the words that Sophia wanted to see in place of her comfort on her benefactors. In the finale of this story, everyone got what they wanted, or what they deserved, depending on their actions and their attitude to this life, and to the people we meet on the long, hard road. It was September 26. Sophia was going to her first job, or rather to the interview. She was very nervous before her first day. After all, she had never worked anywhere before. She had already 6 times reconsidered the lips with red lipstick, because it always went wrong. Then the cat jumps and the hand twitches. Then the stroke turns out to be too wide. Anyway, it was a girl's job. 2 p.m. she was already terribly late for the interview. After all, the bus had left half an hour ago, but she didn't really care about that fact yet. Right now, she was trying to make her appearance presentable. Perfect. She had always wanted to be perfect in everything. In school, she had always been a round, excellent student. Not because 4s were penalized, but because she had always had a need to be better than everyone else. And now, for the first time in her life, she was prettier. And going to the first job in her life, the girl tried to keep everything in order. In her bag, she put all the necessary documents, double-checked them once. 6. She was terribly nervous, but tried to ignore the feeling. Sophia was often nervous before exams, but that didn't stop her from passing them well. Always when she was so stressed her right arm would hurt. She didn't know what it could be related to. But everyone has different peculiarities. Peering around the Catavassia, she double-checked one last time before going out. Was the iron and television off? That was almost a ritual, too. She realized herself that this anxiety wasn't going to lead to anything good, but there was no way she could help herself. One day she got so tired of double-checking closed doors 20 times that she started writing everything down in a small notebook. The girl wrote down the number and the items that needed to be done. And when she had done everything she needed to do, she would check off those items with a check mark. That's how we ride on the bus to school or whatever important business we have to attend to. When Sophia suddenly remembered that the iron was off or the stove was running, she would open this diary and calm down. This kind of anxiety probably comes from her childhood. One day, her teacher gave her a 2 for forgetting her homework book, which she had been doing all night. She cried all day. Her parents deprived her of dinner. It was from that moment that Sophia started checking her briefcase 1,000 times. And then this habit carried over into everyday life. Of course, that morning the girl was already 90% likely to be late for the interview. She had to wait half an hour for another bus, and of course there was no money for a cab at all. This was not like her. She was always punctual and responsible. Very often she came not at the appointed time, but half an hour or even an hour earlier. This time something happened to her. She didn't get up on the first alarm clock, washed her hair in the shower 10 minutes longer, picked up her clothes, and put on makeup for an awfully long time. Or maybe the reason it opened up was that she absolutely did not want to go to this job interview. The waitressing job was far from her dream job, and deep down she hoped that whoever was hiring her would find her unworkable and irresponsible. But on the other hand, there was no other opportunity to earn money, and she had to pay for her studies somehow. Her relatives took her in after her parents died. They gave her an ultimatum that she would pay for her studies herself. They themselves had a rather precarious financial situation. Salaries were just miserable, and it was necessary to feed a family of 5 people. Therefore, having consulted with them, Sophia decided to work part-time as a waitress. This job did not require any mental or hard physical labor, but the pay was quite good. For such simple duties, it was even a little embarrassing. Maybe this restaurant was very expensive, but it wasn't in the center and it wasn't popular with people, so it could hardly be called expensive. Maybe the owner of the place was generous. However, it was only a guess. We had to find out for sure, and that's why Sophia dragged them in a stuffy bus full of people. 8:00 a.m. on a Sunday. And where do other people go this early on their day off? Did everyone have a job interview today? These people were getting annoying. One big man smelled awful, then all over the bus. Sophia prayed that her budget perfume would remain persistent. The other was talking so loudly that the whole town could hear it if it wanted to. But can't personal space be respected? What kind of disrespect for other people? Sophia sat patiently and waited for her stop. A couple of times she got up, because elderly grandmothers always had to give way, although these grandmothers sometimes looked healthier than she was. Finally, the street was announced, and Sophia rushed to the exit, the building she had been invited to. It turned out to be a business center, and it seemed that all 3 floors belonged to the same man she was now going to interview. He owned a chain of restaurants and Sophia, and didn't understand why the man still hadn't moved to New York. I mean, he certainly had the opportunity. "You're an hour late," a secretary with a decent bust remarked snidely. Why does she wear such an open shirt? Traffic was terrible. Sophia lied, embarrassed as she shifted from foot to foot. Couldn't find a seat. "Will you also be late when you work for us?" "No, not at all. This is the first and last time," Sophia declared. She felt terribly guilty. She was rarely scolded for being late. It was usually others who were late, not her, and she wasn't used to reporting back and finding normal excuses. "Jacob will see you in 15 minutes. The receptionist said indifferently, looking at the computer and not raising her eyes to Sophia. The girls did not even offer to sit down, let alone drink coffee. And after all, in the movies, future employees were treated with respect. But it seemed that was only in the movies. Jacob turned out to be a punctual man, and exactly 15 minutes later he called Sophia to his office. The study was not at all remarkable, and neither was its owner. Nothing out of the ordinary. A plain white room with an equally plain businessman in a tie. The man looked to be about 27, pretty young looking. It was even surprising to see such a young guy in a wig, but their cool office attire. "So Sophia, The man stretched out thoughtfully, looking at the papers in his hands. "Sit down, please. Why are you standing?" He turned to her. The girl only now noticed that she was literally staring at the guy, gone into her own thoughts and probably embarrassed him. She woke up quickly, sat down on the comfortable chair. It was so soft, she didn't want to get up from it. From this angle, Sophia was able to get a better look at the restaurant owner. He was a handsome brunette. That could have been the end of it, but she wanted to get a better look at him. His long curls fell beautifully over his shoulders. The long bob suited him well. The neat stubble was also to his face, and the plump lips added some zest. She could call him the man of her dreams. And then, when the girl realized in what way she was thinking about her potential boss, she immediately blushed and forced herself to stop this indecent stream of thoughts. In your resume, you wrote that you have never had experience as a waitress. Finally, the guy said. The girl answered in the affirmative. Well, I have long owned the business and boiled in this mess, so I arrange interviews, even for employees like you said, Jacob. I'm sorry, but everyone needs waiters, and they almost always hire just anyone. I want only the best to work in my restaurant. There was a silent pause, during which the guy looked at the documents, then at the girl. A few times he even smiled at her. What gave Sophia any hope for a good outcome? That smile evoked only positive emotions in her. She caught herself feeling some kind of sympathy for this gentleman. It had only been 15 minutes,